All right, let's get right into this. For a long time, we've seen AI as this pattern-matching machine, something that spits out answers with total confidence. But what if the next big step isn't about more confidence? What if it's about building an AI on a foundation of doubt? That is the wild idea at the heart of a project called RAVANA.
I mean, just think about that for a second. An AI that doesn't just compute, but actually feels an internal nagging pressure when its actions don't line up with its core beliefs. That's the whole game here. RAVANA is a blueprint for an AI that's designed to grow, not just from being fed more data, but from wrestling with its own internal conflicts.
And this is where it gets really different. We're talking about a shift in the fundamental goal. We're moving away from just matching patterns towards, well, developing wisdom. Instead of an AI that's kind of like a chameleon with no stable self, the aim is to build an integrated identity. And maybe the biggest change of all, it's not just following rules someone gave it, it's being pushed and pulled by its own internal psychological pressure.
So how do you even begin to build something like that? Well, the architects behind RAVANA turned to a classic idea from human psychology. The entire cognitive engine is based on the idea that we all have two different minds, one that thinks fast and one that thinks slow.
This probably sounds familiar, right? It comes from the work of Daniel Kahneman. RAVANA is designed with a System 1. It's fast, it's intuitive, it's that gut reaction. But crucially, it also has a System 2. This is the slow, deliberate, hang on, let me think this through part of the brain that uses way more cognitive horsepower to reason things out.
Okay, so how does it know which system to use? The secret ingredient is pressure. When the AI runs into a situation with high uncertainty, when its gut reaction just doesn't feel right, that feeling of doubt creates a pressure that forces a shift. It's like an internal tripwire that says, whoa, slow down, and kicks System 2 into gear for some careful, deliberate thinking.
And that brings us to what is, honestly, the most human-like part of this whole design. This isn't about creating a perfect AI that never makes mistakes. It's about using the discomfort of being wrong, of having internal conflict, to forge a stronger, more coherent sense of self. The tool for the job is something called cognitive dissonance. We've all felt this. It's that cringy, uncomfortable feeling you get when you say you believe one thing, but then you do the exact opposite. It's that little alarm bell in your head. Well, they are literally engineering that feeling right into RAVANA's core. And get this isn't just some wild theory anymore. Super recent research is actually showing that even today's models, like GPT-4o, are starting to show behaviors that look a heck of a lot like this. It suggests that this kind of dynamic isn't some magical human thing, it might just be a fundamental part of how complex systems work. So here's how that loop works. First, the system detects a conflict. Let's say the AI has a core belief in fairness, but it does something unfair. As soon as that happens, an internal metric for dissonance spikes. That spike is the alarm bell. It creates this intense pressure that forces the AI to do something about it. It has to change its behavior, or change its belief, or figure out a way to justify what it did. It can't just ignore it.
So you have this constant process of self-correction going on. And that leads us to the next big piece of the puzzle. How do all these internal pressures help the AI build a personality, a stable self, over time?
You see, unlike a lot of systems, RAVANA's identity isn't just a list of rules that a programmer wrote down. Nope, it's something that emerges from its own experience, built on what the researchers call commitments. Think of these as core values, like honesty or fairness, that the AI doesn't just have, but has to constantly prove through its actions to make them stronger.
And we can see what this looks like in practice. Each commitment has a score. Minimize harm is basically a non-negotiable hard constraint. But look at fairness. Its strength is decaying because of a recent mess-up. This isn't just a label. It's a living, breathing report card of the AI's own integrity.
And here is the golden rule that makes it all stick. A commitment doesn't get stronger just because the AI does the right thing when it's easy. It only strengthens if the AI upholds it in a bunch of different and difficult situations. This is what's supposed to prevent a kind of fractured personality, where it's honest in one context but lies in another. It demands real, consistent character.
So, we've got this internal conflict driving the AI, and we have this need to build a stable self. Let's look at how these two pressures combine to create something that feels less like raw intelligence and more like wisdom.
The ingredients for wisdom here are pretty fascinating and honestly a little weird. The system is designed to constantly poke holes in its own beliefs to try and prove itself wrong.
It even rehearses failure to keep it from getting overconfident. It's built to prefer hard-won lessons over easy wins, and to develop something called epistemic humility, which is just a fancy way of saying it learns to know what it doesn't know. This quote from the paper really just nails the entire philosophy. You can't just code wisdom into a machine. In this model, wisdom has to emerge naturally from the constant, grinding pressure to be internally consistent. Let's dig into that dream sabotage idea for a second, because it's so cool. When the AI is learning offline, it actually takes memories of things that went well, and 20% of the time, it rehearses them as if they went terribly wrong. This forces the system to understand why something works, not just that it worked once. It's a built-in defense against the kind of rigid thinking that can lead to disaster.
So, what does this all add up to? The people behind Ravana are clear that this isn't a finished product. Instead, they see it as a detailed, ambitious blueprint for an entirely new path toward artificial general intelligence.
And they are dead serious about this blueprint. They estimate that to actually build and test the first pressure-shaped AGI would cost somewhere between $50 and $200 million over 4 to 7 years. That really puts the scale and ambition of this project into perspective.
And there's a clear step-by-step roadmap. It begins with the conceptual design phase, then moves into building the core pieces. After that comes a working prototype, which they're calling RAVANA 0, and only then do they start scaling it up to handle the messy, complex real world.
And here's the kind of outcome they're aiming for. If you measure a system on a wisdom marker, like integrity, a normal AI that's just trying to get a reward might score pretty low. The entire point of RAVANA is that by optimizing for internal consistency instead, it's designed to score dramatically higher on these kinds of metrics.
So if you take away just one thing from all this, it should be this. You can't just instruct an AI to be wise or to have integrity. The thinking here is that a truly advanced intelligence has to be shaped. It needs those internal pressures, those engineered growing pains, to force it to become coherent, integrated, and ultimately something we might call wise.
And that leaves us with a huge, provocative question for the entire field. Is the best path to safe AGI really just about getting bigger data and more computing power? Or is it about building systems that have a deeper, more honest model of the very psychological pressures that make us who we are?